In a quiet town, there was an old house known as the Miller's House. Left abandoned for decades, it stood at the end of a long, winding road, surrounded by withered trees and thick fog that seemed to linger even in the daytime. The townspeople spoke of eerie sounds and ghostly figures that haunted the place. No one dared to approach it, especially after dark, except for those who didn't believe in curses. One cold October night, a group of 3 friends, Mark, Lila, and Sam, decided to prove the stories wrong. Armed with flashlights and false courage, they set off on the dare to explore the old Miller's house after midnight. The wind howled as they made their way through the dense mist, and the silence of the town only made the night feel darker. By the time they reached the gate, the air seemed colder, and the moon was hidden behind thick clouds, casting an eerie darkness around them. "Are we really doing this?" Lila whispered, her breath visible in the cold night air. "Of course, it's just an old house," Mark said, though his voice was less confident than usual. Sam led the way, pushing open the rusty iron gate, which groaned loudly as if warning them not to enter. The front yard was overgrown with tangled vines, and the trees cast long, skeletal shadows on the path. As they approached the porch, they noticed the door was ajar, hanging crookedly on its hinges. The sight made Lila hesitate, but the boys urged her forward. "Okay, we go in, stay for 10 minutes, and then we're out," Sam said, trying to hide the tremor in his voice. They stepped inside, their flashlights flickering across the dusty, cobweb-covered walls. The air was musty and thick, making it hard to breathe. The floorboards creaked beneath their feet, echoing in the silence. Mark led the group deeper into the house, toward the hallway that split off into various rooms. As they moved, Lila felt a chill run down her spine, and she had the distinct feeling they were being watched. "I don't like this," she muttered, gripping her flashlight tighter. "Relax, it's just old stories," Mark scoffed, but as they passed by a mirror hanging on the wall, they all froze. The glass, coated in dust, reflected not just the 3 of them but a shadowy figure standing behind them. It was tall, with no distinct features, just a dark silhouette. Lila screamed, and the shadow seemed to dissolve into the darkness as she turned around. But no one was there. "What was that?" Sam whispered, panic rising in his voice. "Maybe it was nothing. Let's keep moving," Mark insisted, but his confidence was clearly shaken. They continued down the hallway, but the house seemed to grow colder. A low whispering sound echoed from one of the rooms ahead, like the murmurs of an unseen crowd. Lila's flashlight flickered, and she grabbed Mark's arm. "I want to leave, now." Suddenly, the whispering stopped, replaced by the sound of footsteps echoing upstairs. They all looked up at the ceiling, their hearts racing. Someone or something was walking above them. Sam's hands were shaking as he pointed his flashlight at the staircase. "I think we should go check it out." "Are you crazy?" Lila hissed. "We should get out of here." But Mark, determined to prove the house wasn't haunted, slowly ascended the creaking stairs. Reluctantly, Sam and Lila followed, their eyes darting around as they climbed. Each step felt like it took hours, and the silence was deafening. When they reached the top, they found themselves in a narrow corridor with several closed doors. The air felt heavy, and the temperature dropped noticeably. Mark hesitated before opening the first door. Inside was a child's bedroom, untouched for years. A small bed, covered in dust, sat against the wall, and a rocking chair faced the window. The chair began to rock slowly, despite there being no wind. Lila gasped, and Sam shone his flashlight toward the chair. "It's just the wind," he said, though his voice betrayed his fear. Mark stepped forward and, with a shaking hand, reached for the chair to stop it. As his hand made contact, a cold gust of wind swept through the room, slamming the door shut behind them. The 3 friends screamed, their flashlights flickering wildly. "Get out! Get out!" a voice shouted, filling the room. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once. The chair began to rock faster, and the shadows in the corners of the room twisted and moved as if they were alive. In a panic, they turned to open the door, but it was stuck. Lila banged on it, tears streaming down her face. "Let us out, please," just as Mark and Sam joined her in trying to force it open. The whispers returned, louder this time, and the shadow they had seen earlier materialized in the doorway. It slowly moved toward them, its figure shifting as if made of smoke. The closer it got, the colder the room became. In their desperation, they pushed the door with all their strength, and it finally gave way. They stumbled out into the hallway and bolted down the stairs, the footsteps of the shadowy figure echoing behind them. Lila's heart pounded as she sprinted for the front door, feeling a chill creeping up her spine as if icy fingers were reaching for her. They burst through the door and ran out into the night, not stopping until they reached the end of the driveway. Breathing heavily, they looked back at the house. The lights inside flickered, and they could see the shadow watching them from the window. From that night on, none of them spoke about what happened at the old Miller's house. They never returned, and whenever they passed by, they swore they felt a pair of eyes watching from the darkness. Years later, the house was torn down, but the legend remained. Some say that if you pass by the lot at midnight and whisper, "Miller, are you there?" you'll hear the door creak open, and footsteps will follow you all the way home.